Secretive group Anonymous hacked one of its websites. Sometime early this morning, the group took over the site belonging to the U.S. Sentencing Commission. A long message and a video warning of embarrassing disclosures about the Justice Department unless federal prosecutors stop going after hackers.
Organization Anonymous has announced plans to take down the bot's website for fixed. Now, that day brings you because it should if you're familiar with Anonymous's favorite historical figure.
The hacktivist group, shrouded in secrecy, has declared war on ISIS. But there's another technically sophisticated group fighting an online war with ISIS. It's lesser known, but has a track record. Its leader is an ex-Anonymous member.
Okay, well come on in guys, just do this because I just vacuumed. You got that recording? So I'm just asking you right now what seems paranoid and delusional about me.
We're not doctors. We don't
So you're here to transport me to a private facility.
No, Oconee Memorial.
Do you realize that right now that they're being bought out? It's a private hospital now?
Well,
citizens of the world, we are anonymous. The next phase of the government's war on thought crimes, mental health roundups and involuntary detentions. Under the guise of public health and safety, the government could use mental health care as a pretext for targeting and locking up dissidents, activists and anyone unfortunate enough to be placed on a government watch list. If we don't nip this in the bud, and soon, this will become yet another pretext by which government officials can violate the First and Fourth Amendments at will. This is how it begins. In communities across the nation, police are being empowered to forcibly detain individuals they believe might be mentally ill, based solely on their own judgment, even if those individuals pose no danger to others. In New York City, for example, you could find yourself forcibly hospitalized for suspected mental illness if you carry firmly held beliefs not congruent with cultural ideas, exhibit a willingness to engage in meaningful discussion, have excessive fears of specific stimuli, or refuse voluntary treatment recommendations. While these programs are ostensibly aimed at getting the homeless off the streets, when combined with advances in mass surveillance technologies, artificial intelligence-powered programs that can track people by their biometrics and behavior, mental health sensor data, tracked by wearable data and monitored by government agencies such as HARPA, threat assessments, behavioral sensing warnings, pre-crime initiatives, red flag gun laws, and mental health first aid programs aimed at training gatekeepers to identify who might pose a threat to public safety, they could well signal a tipping point in the government's efforts to penalize those engaging in so-called thought crimes. As the app reports, federal officials are already looking into how to add identifiable patient data, such as mental health, substance use and behavioral health information from group homes, shelters, jails, detox facilities and schools, to its surveillance toolkit. Make no mistake, these are the building blocks for an American gulag no less sinister than that of the gulags of the Cold War-era Soviet Union. The word gulag refers to a labor or concentration camp where prisoners, oftentimes political prisoners or so-called enemies of the state, real or imagined, were imprisoned as punishment for their crimes against the state. The Gulag, according to historian Anne Applebaum, used as a form of administrative exile, which required no trial and no sentencing procedure, was an ideal punishment not only for troublemakers as such, but also for political opponents of the regime. Totalitarian regimes such as the Soviet Union also declared dissidents mentally ill and consigned political prisoners to prisons disguised as psychiatric hospitals, where they could be isolated from the rest of society, their ideas discredited, and subjected to electric shocks, drugs and various medical procedures to break them physically and mentally. In addition to declaring political dissidents mentally unsound, government officials in the Cold War-era Soviet Union also made use of an administrative process for dealing with individuals who were considered a bad influence on others or troublemakers. Author George Kennan describes a process in which the obnoxious person may not be guilty of any crime, but if, in the opinion of the local authorities, his presence in a particular place is prejudicial to public order or incompatible with public tranquility, he may be arrested without warrant, may be held from 2 weeks to 2 years in prison, and may then be removed by force to any other place within the limits of the empire and be put under police surveillance for a period of from 1 to 10 years. Warrantless seizures, surveillance, indefinite detention, isolation, exile. Sound familiar? It should. The age-old practice by which despotic regimes eliminate their critics or potential adversaries by making them disappear, or forcing them to flee, or exiling them literally or figuratively or virtually from their fellow citizens, is happening with increasing frequency in America. Now, through the use of red flag laws, behavioral threat assessments, and pre-crime policing prevention programs, the groundwork is being laid that would allow their government to weaponize the label of mental illness as a means of exiling those whistleblowers, dissidents and freedom fighters who refuse to march in lockstep with its dictates. That the government is using the charge of mental illness as the means by which to immobilize and disarm its critics is diabolical. With one stroke of a magistrate's pen, these individuals are declared mentally ill, locked away against their will, and stripped of their constitutional rights. These developments are merely the realization of various U.S. government initiatives dating back to 2009, including one dubbed Operation Vigilant Eagle, which calls for surveillance of military veterans returning from Iraq and Afghanistan, characterizing them as extremists and potential domestic terrorist threats because they may be disgruntled, disillusioned or suffering from the psychological effects of war. Coupled with the report on right-wing extremism, current economic and political climate fueling resurgence in radicalization and recruitment issued by the Department of Homeland Security, curiously enough, a Soviet term, which broadly defines right-wing extremists as individuals and groups that are mainly anti-government, rejecting federal authority in favor of state or local authority, or rejecting government authority entirely. These tactics bode ill for anyone seen as opposing the government. Thus, what began as a blueprint under the Bush administration has since become an operation manual for exiling those who challenge the government's authority. An important point to consider, however, is that the government is not merely targeting individuals who are voicing their discontent so much as it is locking up individuals trained in military warfare who are voicing feelings of discontent. Under the guise of mental health treatment and with the complicity of government psychiatrists and law enforcement officials, these veterans are increasingly being portrayed as ticking time bombs in need of intervention. For instance, the Justice Department launched a pilot program aimed at training SWAT teams to deal with confrontations involving highly trained and often heavily armed combat veterans. One tactic being used to deal with so-called mentally ill suspects who also happen to be trained in modern warfare is through the use of civil commitment laws, found in all states and employed throughout American history to not only silence but cause dissidents to disappear. For example, NSA officials attempted to label former employee Russ Tice, who was willing to testify in Congress about the NSA's warrantless wiretapping program, as mentally unbalanced based upon 2 psychiatric evaluations ordered by his superiors. NIPT officer Adrian Schoolcraft had his home raided, and he was handcuffed to a gurney and taken into emergency custody for an alleged psychiatric episode. It was later discovered by way of an internal investigation that his superiors were retaliating against him for reporting police misconduct. Schoolcraft spent 6 days in the mental facility, and as a further indignity, was presented with a bill for $7,185 upon his release. Marine Brandon Raub, a 9/11 truther, was arrested and detained in a psychiatric ward under Virginia's civil commitment law based on posts he had made on his Facebook page that were critical of the government. Each state has its own set of civil, or involuntary, commitment laws. These laws are extensions of two legal principles, parens patriae, Latin for parent of the country, which allows the government to intervene on behalf of citizens who cannot act in their own best interest, and police power, which requires a state to protect the interests of its citizens. The fusion of these two principles, coupled with a shift towards a dangerousness standard, has resulted in a nanny state mindset carried out with the militant force of the police state. The problem, of course, is that the diagnosis of mental illness, while a legitimate concern for some Americans, has over time become a convenient means by which the government and its corporate partners can penalize certain unacceptable social behaviors. In fact, in recent years, we have witnessed the pathologizing of individuals who resist authority, suffering from oppositional defiant disorder, ODD, defined as a pattern of disobedient, hostile, and defiant behavior toward authority figures. Under such a definition, every activist of note throughout our history, from Mahatma Gandhi to Martin Luther King Jr., could be classified as suffering from an ODD mental disorder. Of course, this is all part of a larger trend in American governance whereby dissent is criminalized and pathologized, and dissenters are censored, silenced, declared unfit for society, labeled dangerous or extremist, or turned into outcasts and exiled.
Sarah Huckabee Sanders was denied service at the restaurant, that what we should be doing is shunning these people. Shaming these people is a statement of moral indignation, that these people are not fit for polite society. I think any institution, and University of Virginia, for example, for a bit, had a relationship with Mark Short, who's now back with the administration. Absolutely abhorrent that any institution of higher learning, any news organization, or any entertainment organization that has a news outlet would hire these people. I also want to echo something that my friend EJ said. It's not only that Trump has to lose, but that all his enablers have to lose. We have to collectively, in essence, burn down the Republican Party. We have to level them, because if there are survivors, we have to level them, because if there are survivors, if there are people who weather this storm, they will do it again. They will take this as confirmation.
Donald Trump, I think you need to go back and punch him in the face.
But I thought he should have punched him in the face.
I feel like punching him.
I'd like to take him behind the gym if I were in high school. If we were in high school, I'd take him behind the gym and beat the hell out of him.
No, I wish we were in high school. I could take him behind the gym.
I will go and take Trump out tonight.
Take him out now.
Okay. When was the last time an actor assassinated a president?
They're still going to have to go out and put a bullet in Donald Trump.
Show me where it says that protests are supposed to be polite and peaceful.
I have thought an awful lot about blowing up the White House.
Please, get up in the face of some Congress people.
People will do what they do.
I want to tell you, Judge, I want to tell you, Kavanaugh, you have released the whirlwind, and you will pay the price.
We're going to go in there, we're going to...
This is just a warning to you Trumpers. Be careful. Walk lightly. And for those of you who are soldiers, make them
count. 3, 2, 1, go! Welcome to the Red Kingdom. Yeah. Red Kingdom. Welcome to the Red Kingdom. Yeah. Red Kingdom. Welcome to the place where we run it. Place really haunted by number 58 is DT the Great, and we flaunt it. Hate and we shun it. No competition, the opposition fake. I don't think they really want it. Loud is the recipe. Loud sitting next to me, no doubt. Now we are proud that we get to see KC Chiefs come and break these geeks, make them taste these cleats. Welcome to the Red Kingdom. Yeah. Red Kingdom. Welcome to the
Red flag gun laws, which authorize government officials to seize guns from individuals viewed as a danger to themselves or others, are a perfect example of this mindset at work and the ramifications of where this could lead. As the Washington Post reports, these red flag gun laws allow family member, roommate, beau, law enforcement officer or any type of medical professional to file a petition with a court, asking that a person's home be temporarily cleared of firearms. It doesn't require a mental health diagnosis or an arrest. With these red flag gun laws, the stated intention is to disarm individuals who are potential threats. While in theory it appears perfectly reasonable to want to disarm individuals who are clearly suicidal and or pose an immediate danger to themselves or others, where the problem arises is when you put the power to determine who is a potential danger in the hands of government agencies, the courts and the police. Remember, this is the same government that uses the words anti-government, extremist and terrorist interchangeably. This is the same government whose agents are spinning a sticky spider web of threat assessments, behavioral sensing warnings, flagged words, and suspicious activity reports using automated eyes and ears, social media, behavior sensing software, and citizen spies to identify potential threats. This is the same government that keeps re-upping their National Defense Authorization Act, NDAA, which allows the military to detain American citizens with no access to friends, family or the courts if the government believes them to be a threat. This is the same government that has a growing list, shared with fusion centers and law enforcement agencies, of ideologies, behaviors, affiliations and other characteristics that could flag someone as suspicious and result in their being labeled potential enemies of the state. For instance, if you believe in and exercise your rights under the Constitution, namely, your right to speak freely, worship freely, associate with like-minded individuals who share your political views, criticize the government, own a weapon, demand a warrant before being questioned or searched, or any other activity viewed as potentially anti-government, racist, bigoted, anarchic or sovereign, you could be at the top of the government's terrorism watch list. Moreover, as a New York Times editorial warns, you may be an anti-government extremist, aka domestic terrorist, in the eyes of the police if you are afraid that the government is plotting to confiscate your firearms, if you believe the economy is about to collapse and the government will soon declare martial law, or if you display an unusual number of political and or ideological bumper stickers on your car. Let that sink in a moment. Now consider the ramifications of giving police that kind of authority in order to preemptively neutralize a potential threat, and you'll understand why some might view these mental health roundups with trepidation. No matter how well-meaning the politicians make these encroachments on our rights appear, in the right, or wrong, hands, benevolent plans can easily be put to malevolent purposes. Even the most well-intentioned government law or program can be, and has been, perverted, corrupted and used to advance illegitimate purposes once profit and power are added to the equation. The war on terror, the war on drugs, the war on illegal immigration, the war on COVID-19, all of these programs started out as legitimate responses to pressing concerns and have since become weapons of compliance and control in the government's hands. For instance, the very same mass surveillance technologies that were supposedly so necessary to fight the spread of COVID-19 are now being used to stifle dissent, persecute activists, harass marginalized communities, and link people's health information to other surveillance and law enforcement tools. As I make clear in my book Battlefield America, The War on the American People and in its fictional counterpart The Eric Blair Diaries, we are moving fast down that slippery slope to an authoritarian society in which the only opinions, ideas and speech expressed are the ones permitted by the government and its corporate cohorts. We stand at a crossroads. At this point in history, the capacity to doubt, to criticize and to disobey may be all that stands between a future for mankind and the end of civilization is under attack.
We are anonymous. We are Legion. We do not forgive. We will not forget. Expect us.